service would be so much better. But Deacon Festus told those young people there was no way it was going to happen in New Pilgrim. So the young people wanted to know why. Deacon Festus gave those young folks 3 reasons why it wasn't going to happen. He said, first of all, there ain't no money in the budget for a chandelier. Second of all, it ain't no place in the church to put it. And third, no one is trained to play it. On that note, the young people say they had enough of New Pilgrims and enough of Deacon Festus. So they decided to move on out and start a Pilgrim's journey so they could be free to add some dimension to the church service.
Does the Pilgrim tale end there with Pilgrim's journey?
Not quite, not quite.
Don't stop now, Mom. Keep going.
Well, they tell me that those young people did pretty well for a while at Pilgrim's journey. I heard that they had a big bunch of young folks singing and shouting till the crack of dawn. They also had a nice young preacher too. He was bringing in all the people from the hood. And you know it's always good to bring in folks from the hood. I think they need some churches too.
You're right, Mom. Of course they do. Don't stop now. Continue on.
Well, the story is told that before it was all over, they wished they had discriminated.
Why, Mom?
They say that since the church was so full up with young people, they really didn't manage their funds well. They ran into some problems. They had to cut back on security.
That is never good.
Well, I heard that they ended up hiring Big Willie and those 2 pit bulls to be security for the pastor.
Big Willie. Up and down?
Yes, that was the name of those pit bulls, up and down. And that all went fine for a while until Big Willie got the flu.
The flu?
Yes, he got the flu. You see, Big Willie used to stand outside the pastor door just to see who was approaching, and Up would lay across the door as backup for Big Willie. While they stood on the outside, Down would lay on the inside to make sure that everything was safe with the pastor. Well, and the pastor couldn't leave until he gave the signal to Big Willie. And Big Willie would open the door, double check, and make sure that the way was clear.
Interesting system.
Interesting, I should say. But one day, Big Willie had the flu. And it seems like he had a case of the runs with it also. But he had to go down the hall to the bathroom for an extended time. And while Big Willie was taking care of business, the pastor remembered that he had a meeting. And he jumped up and started for that door. Well, Up quickly reminded the pastor that he was in charge of security. The pastor tried to outsmart him too, you know. And the pastor got to that door. He opened that door just wide enough to let Big Willie in. And he was calling for Big Willie. But those 2 dogs, Up and Down, had been trained very well by Big Willie. Big Willie came running down the hall with bathroom tissue on his shoes and all. When Big Willie got to the pastor, he got those 2 dogs, Up and Down, and he ended up hauling those 2 dogs off. And the ambulance ended up hauling off the pastor. Needless to say, the pastor left the church after all of that. And some of the folks left with him too. They said they weren't too fond of that security system. They were going to start a new church. And they were going to call their new church Pilgrim's Rest.
I can't wait to hear this one.
Well, from what I understand, those folks decided that they were going to rest in Jesus and rest in the church.
Rest in the church?
Yes, and all that resting went good for a while. They said that they had been through so much until they weren't going to be involved with folks again. They weren't going to feed the poor or post the naked. They were going to send those folks to DSS and the Salvation Army. They weren't trying to entertain those drug addicts and alcoholics either. They were going to refer them to AA and NA. They said they were going to take up an offering and they were going to replace those padded pews in the church with some reclining rocker seats so that they could rest, because the pilgrims needed to rest. They said no more visiting the sick, because if people were sick, they need to be in the hospital. And if the sick were at home, they need to be resting. And they were going to rest themselves. But one day when those folks were resting, doing a 1-hour service, a tornado hit. Yes, a tornado. I heard that it was so cozy in that church that most of them folks had fallen asleep. Then all of a sudden, the roof was ripped off of the church. rocket in, went flying through the air. Some of them seats landed in the next town. When they got down out of those trees and the water settled, those folks vowed that it was time to stop resting and give God some glory. When they got the breeze picked up, some of them folks pulled away from Pilgrim's Rest and started Pilgrim Glorious. They vowed they were going to praise God without ceasing. Uncle Toy Lee said that they can be found praising God at all 3 of the church service on Sunday, and at the one on Tuesday and Saturday also. Uncle Toy said that little preacher they got there now, that he is awesome. I also heard he's from New York, and he's going to be bringing the closing message.
Will all the pilgrims be here, represented here? Perhaps I will find out what the real purpose of the big meeting is.
Well, that's what Uncle Toy Lee said.
I can't wait.
Spencer, you slow down now, get close to the south. I'm going to take a nap. Wake me up when you get to Simpsonville. Drive carefully now, drive careful.
All these stories about to drive me to drink.
You say something, Spencer? Maybe you want me to help you drive.
No, Mom, no. I got this. Go to sleep. I got this.
Barroom.